Everyone knows the Speedmaster, but would you still pick it if you knew what else you could get for the same price? From racing legends to resurrected Air Force flybacks, these aren't just chronographs, they're icons, and some of them are dangerously underrated. Today, we're diving into the most iconic chronographs from $2,000 to $20,000. Watches with stories, swagger, and a stopwatch function that could bankrupt a Bond villain. If you're into watches that blend heritage with horsepower, from spring-drive sorcery to twin-barrel beasts, hit that subscribe button. You're in the right place. The Tudor Black Bay Chrono is not just a chronograph. It's a swagger-filled collision between vintage racing heritage and rugged dive watch DNA. Think Panda dial with black recessed subdials and crisp snowflake hands slicing across the opaline dial like they're gunning for pole position. The case is 41mm of brushed steel bravado, standing 14.4mm tall. It wears like a proper tool watch, substantial but never obnoxious. Inside ticks the COSSEC certified MT5813, a movement co-developed with Breitling, but fine-tuned by Tudor, complete with a silicon balance spring and column wheel precision. Flip it over, and while the case back is closed, what you're getting is chronograph royalty, hiding in plain sight. It's water-resistant to 200 meters. Yes, you can dive with it. But really, this is a Daytona for the contrarians, for the collectors who know that cool doesn't always come from hype. It comes from heritage, execution, and sheer wrist charisma. At just over $6,000, it's a hard yes. If there's one chronograph that doesn't need an introduction, but we'll give it one anyway, it's the Omega Speedmaster Moonwatch Professional. This reference is the modern heir to the lunar legend. From the twisted lugs to the domed Hezolite crystal and that unmistakable black step dial, everything here whispers icon in a language that only watch nerds truly understand. It wears a touch large at 42mm, but the thin, tapered bracelet and svelte case sides keep it civilized, even dressy in the right light. Inside beats the Metis certified caliber 3861, coaxial escapement, hacking seconds, 50-hour power reserve, and enough anti-magnetic resistance to survive a black hole. This isn't a watch that's trying to be cool. It already is. It's the watch that's been to the moon, raced at Le Mans, and sat on the wrists of astronauts, artists, and rebels. For $8,400, you're not just buying a chronograph, you're buying an artifact. And one that happens to look incredible under a cuff, or with a flight suit. The Tentograph isn't just Grand Seiko's first mechanical chronograph, it's a flex. Reference SLGC001 brings together everything the brand does best: high-frequency precision, Japanese artistry, and casework so sharp it could cut clouds. The dial, a deep midnight blue, textured like the ridges of Mount Iwate, shifting from ink to cobalt depending on the light. At 43.2mm in titanium, it sounds massive but wears like a feather, balanced, ergonomic, shockingly refined. Inside ticks the new Caliber 9 SC5, a high-beat, 10 beat per second movement with a 3-day power reserve and a vertical clutch, column wheel setup. Translation? It's buttery smooth and built to last a horological eternity. Every press of the chrono pusher feels like cocking a katana. Grand Seiko didn't just make a chronograph, they made a statement that Japanese watchmaking can now punch in the same weight class as Zenith, Rolex, even Patek. At $14,700, this isn't just about function, it's about the fusion of timekeeping and craftsmanship in its most poetic, most unapologetically Japanese form. This isn't a chronograph, this is a submersible time tank with a stopwatch. The Ball Engineer Hydrocarbon NEDU is one of the most over-engineered chronographs in the under 5K category, and that's exactly why it rocks. Originally developed in collaboration with the US Navy's Underwater Demolition Unit, yes, real-life frogmen, this thing is rated to 600 meters, has a patented crown guard that swings like a medieval drawbridge, and features 21 microgas tubes for looms so bright It glows like a rave under your cuff. Inside, a COSC-certified automatic chrono movement, tough enough to laugh in the face of decompression tests. At 42mm, it's beefy but wears smart, thanks to a short lug-to-lug. And that blue gradient dial, it shifts like ocean depth. Moody, tactical, but weirdly elegant. For $4,241, you're not just getting a chronograph, you're getting a deep-sea demolition diver in disguise, dressed for dinner, but ready to rappel into a shipwreck if you know, you know. The Hublot Classic Fusion Chronograph is what happens when a sports watch puts on a tuxedo and still keeps a switchblade in its sock. At 42mm, it's remarkably slim for a chronograph, just 11mm thick, and thanks to the satin-finished titanium case, it floats on the wrist like a whisper. This isn't the loud, flashy Hublot most people expect. This is Restrager. The two-register dial is stark, balanced, and utterly legible, with just the right hint of menace, thanks to those signature H-shaped screws on the bezel. Inside ticks the HUB 1153 movement, an automatic chronograph based on the reliable ETA 2892, with a Dubois Deprat module stacked on top. Is it haute horology? Not really. Is it boutique luxury with everyday attitude? Absolutely. The rubber strap gives it daily driver comfort, while the case finishing gives it boutique cred. For $11,700, this is for the guy who wants a chronograph that doesn't scream, but still gets noticed across the room. Cool, composed, and just cocky enough. If you've ever wanted a classic gentleman's chronograph without selling your soul or your Seamaster, the Frederic Constant Chronograph Automatic delivers. At 41mm, it walks that perfect line between presence and discretion. The black sunray dial shimmers under light like the lacquer on a grand piano, while the silver bicompact subdials add just the right dose of symmetry. It's dressy, yes, but not afraid to time a double espresso. Powered by the FC391 caliber, essentially a finely decorated Valjoux 7750, it brings both reliability and heritage to the table. Think of it as the horological equivalent of a Grand Tourer, refined, robust, and low-key charismatic. The applied markers, Dauphine hands, and date at 6 give it an old-school vibe, with just a touch of modern restraint. And at under $4,000, this is one of the few watches that says, "I appreciate craftsmanship without screaming for attention." Subtle, sharp, and smarter than it looks, like a watch collector's poker face. The CQ chronograph from Glashütte Original is like a Cold War-era diver that took a postgraduate course in haute horology. At first glance, that galvanic blue dial stuns, but look again. The subdials are sunken and subtly grained, the hands and indices glow like tritium dreams of the 70s, and that pop of orange on the chrono seconds hand. Pure Saxon sass. Powered by the in-house caliber 3723, this is a column wheel flyback movement with 70 hours of power reserve and a silky smooth pusher feel. The case is hefty at 43.2mm, but wears balance thanks to short lugs and the curve of the integrated rubber strap. This is a chronograph that doesn't scream tool watch but whispers capability. It's ISO certified for diving, but let's be honest, it looks just as at home timing an espresso shot in Berlin as it does timing decompression stops off the Baltic coast. The German answer to the Speedmaster? Maybe, but with more mystery, more depth, and a dial you won't stop staring at. At $15,700, it's serious Saxon style, with stopwatch functionality. Angelus isn't here to follow trends. It's here to remind you that some icons go dormant before returning sharper than ever. The chronograph telemeter in steel grey feels like the comeback tour of a cult jazz artist. Underground pedigree, reinterpreted with razor-sharp modernity. That angular 40mm case looks like it was CNC'd by a stealth bomber engineer, while the matte grey dial pulls you into its utilitarian calm, until you notice the bright red accents sparking off the subdials and telemeter scale. And yes, it has a telemeter because sometimes measuring the distance to lightning strikes is just cool. Inside, you'll find the A500 movement, an automatic column wheel chrono with a flyback function and a skeletonized rotor that looks like it belongs in a spaceship. This is a chronograph that doesn't beg for vintage nostalgia. It weaponizes it. For the price of a Daytona, You get independent horology with attitude. If you know, you know. And if you wear this, people will know. You know. At $20,400, this is cult cool, re-engineered for the modern wrist. The Jacques Dross Grand Seconde chronograph doesn't just tell time, it composes it. This is haute horlogerie's equivalent of a jazz solo, offbeat, fluid and unapologetically artistic. The 43mm case in polished stainless steel frames a blue sunred dial so rich, it looks like it's been pulled from a gallery wall. But the real seduction is the dial layout, Jacques Dross signature figure 8 composition, with time up top and the monopusher chronograph retrograding below, as if time were performing a slow pirouette. The movement is the JD26M5R, built on a Frédéric Piguet base but heavily customized. Press the single pusher, and the second's hand jumps into motion like it's dancing to a private rhythm. It's dressy, yes, but there's a quiet madness in its elegance, the kind that makes collectors lean in, not away. For $19,400, you're not just buying a chronograph, you're commissioning a mechanical sculpture with a soul. The Blancpain Air Command Flyback chronograph is the kind of watch that doesn't just whisper history, it shouts it from the cockpit. Originally a prototype made for military pilots in the 50s, it never got an official launch, which made it even more desirable. This 2023 revival takes that mythical DNA and dresses it in a 42.5mm grade 23 titanium case, a deep blue sunburst dial and a bi-directional countdown bezel that feels straight out of a Cold War flight manual. Inside beats the F388B movement, running at a high frequency of 5 Hz for razor-sharp chrono action. And yes, it's a flyback, meaning you can restart timing with a single push. The propeller-inspired rotor, visible through the sapphire caseback, is a wink to its aviation roots. But don't be fooled, this isn't a rugged tool watch. It wears like a feather, light, sleek, and devastatingly refined. At $20,400, this is heritage weaponized into elegance. If the Speedmaster is NASA's darling, the Air Command is what Maverick wears when the cameras aren't rolling. So, after 10 legends, 10 stories and 10 very persuasive reasons to go broke, what have we learned? Chronographs are more than stopwatches. They're design playgrounds, technical flexes, and sometimes emotional time capsules. Whether it's the moon-chasing Omega or the avant-garde poetry of Jacques Dross, each one says something wildly different about the person wearing it. Maybe you're the kind of collector who obsesses over column wheels and vertical clutches. Or maybe you're just here for something that looks great with a denim jacket and an espresso. Either way, there's a chrono in this lineup that probably whispered your name. So tell me, which one stopped your heart? Drop it in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious who takes the crown in your book. And hey, if you love watches from quartz to spring drive, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Oh, and if one of these watches made you feel seen, check the links in the description. Some of them help support the channel while you do your late night browsing. Just saying. Catch you in the next one, Chrono fam.